Hey everyone, so it can be incredibly frustrating to lose games with score lines like this. Obviously your team sucked, you were the better jungler, and it's just time to queue up again and hope that you have a better team next time, right? Wrong. Today, we're going to show you how looking at your KDA can be a huge trap in evaluating your game impact. Beyond that, we'll show you how to actually take control of who wins the game when you get ahead. And this idea is so important for junglers. Once 15 minutes hits and everyone starts farming your jungle, you're 2 to 3 levels behind solo lanes, we've all been there. It becomes really hard for most junglers to influence the outcome of a game at this point. So we need to strike and establish victory in the first 15 minutes. So how do we take control over games and actually impact who wins? Well, for today's video, we're going to assume that you've gotten off to a good start. After all, this guide is about how to stop losing games with good KDAs. We talk a lot about how to get leads here at SkillCap. This video is about how to turn those leads into victories. And the way that we do this is by accelerating the game as much as possible and punishing enemies to our max potential. In pro play or high elo, you'll sometimes see teams wanting to scale, play for late, etc. However, we do not feel that this is a reliable or necessary win condition in low elo. Events are too random, too unpredictable. The more time that you give the enemy team, the more likely it is that someone on your team throws your lead. Plus, your impact and control on the game generally reduces more and more as the game goes on, unless you're playing very specific champions. And here are the core concepts that we'll be showing you how to master and stop messing up, leading you to clean, quick wins. So let's jump into our games for the day, starting with a Platinum 4 Pantheon, who ended the game at 13-4-13 in a 37-minute loss. It would be very easy for this player to assume that he played great and that this loss was just an unlucky team. But if we jump to 16-20 in the game, we see our Pantheon is 6-0-1 while the enemy Graves is 2-2-1. And we think Graves has done as much if not more to help his team win the game. Notice how the blue team has taken all 3 outer turrets, and they also have 2 dragons. Meanwhile, the red team, despite having such an insanely strong jungler, has not taken a single objective. So let's quickly look at where our Platinum Pantheon went wrong this game and how he could have snowballed in a meaningful way. At 8 minutes, we see Pantheon nearly kill off Nasus, and he also saw Graves bottom shortly before. Instead of standing around and eventually running back to his jungle, he could have easily secured the Herald while Graves did Dragon. 90 seconds later, we see Pantheon ult top in a 2-for-1 trade since Mordekaiser killed Nasus earlier. Once again, this is a perfect opportunity to take Herald. Instead, he walks up, decides to leave the wave in a terrible spot, then just does Krugs. This was really just a colossal waste of the play top. You can clearly see this Pantheon is only playing for kills and gold, not to win. Once again, 4 minutes later, we see Pantheon top helping to kill Nasus. He helps Mordekaiser push, then just leaves. Moments earlier, we'd seen Graves bottom and even got to see Yasuo moving down to the dragon. This is a completely free tower on the top side. Mordekaiser ends up hitting the top tower by himself for a bit, but after 3 successful plays top, the tower is barely half health. So yes, our Platinum Pantheon ends this game with a great scoreline that looks really nice, but he did very little to help his team win. He took no towers, no dragons, no heralds, didn't invade at all, he only got gold on himself, which was not enough to carry the game. He had a huge lead and squandered it. Now, let's compare this to what happens when our challenger consultants smurf in similar elos. First, we join with Olaf, already very fed at 8 minutes, but not even that much more fed than our Pantheon was earlier. He's in the enemy jungle, asserting his strength onto the map, denying the enemy jungler before starting it up and taking the Herald shortly after it spawned at 8 minutes. About a minute later, we see Olaf killing a hard trolling Renekton, and now we get to see the potential of Rift Herald. Olaf starts hitting the tower for a bit, then drops Herald, eventually taking 2 top lane towers. Talk about accelerating the game and putting your stamp on it, right? And yes, that was an extreme example of Rift Herald's power, but it's not as extreme as you might think. In this game, which was the very next one that this challenger played in Gold Elo, we see him picking up kills in the top lane. Once again, not all that much more fed than our Pantheon from earlier. After Graves and his team are once again able to use the Herald to super quickly grab 2 towers. So, how does our challenger get so much value out of this objective consistently? Well, let's do a quick crash course on a jungler's best friend, Shelley. There are two fundamental things that you need to understand here. Number one, Rift Herald will remove exactly 2 plates from a tower with true damage. Secondly, towers gain significant armor as they die, meaning that the 5th plate is much slower to break than the 1st. So if we jump back to that earlier Olaf clip, we can see that our challenger times Herald to kill exactly the last 2 plates, even turning to hit minions once he knew that Herald would finish it. This is why he's able to blast through 2 towers so quickly. Again, in the Graves clip, Shelley is only used on the last 2 plates, though a bit imperfectly. And we really want to stress for you just how much armor these turrets gain on later plates. In this game, we see a gold 2 Olaf that we'll look at more later. He and Camille are able to grab a nice kill top in a successful gank. Then we see Olaf dropping the Herald way too soon. And just look at how long it takes to finish this last plate. It's just not taking damage. Now, tower armor varies depending on how many champions are nearby as well, but just look at how insanely this number scales up as it loses plates. This is why it's so important to use that true damage on the last 2 parts. Another thing that I want to cover is how to time Herald so that it does hit perfectly at the end. The general consensus on this is that you should drop Herald between 2.5 to 3 plates remaining, depending on how much tower damage you do and how many allies you have nearby. So, in the Olaf example, he's super strong and no one else is there to buff the turret armor, so he drops it at 3, which is close to perfect since he can just hit minions. As long as you're within that 2.5 to 3 plates range, you should be fine. No earlier or later. The last thing I want to mention about Herald before we get back into low elo replays is that you'll get so much more from it if uncontested. In these Smurf examples, he had always killed the defender beforehand. Whether they are dead, in base, TP'd elsewhere, completely zoned out, it doesn't matter. As long as they aren't there to defend, that's when you use the Herald. To give yourself a better shot of finding a good time to do this, we do recommend taking the Herald between 8 to 10 minutes. The Eye of Herald buff lasts for 4 minutes and plates fall off at 14. So, as long as you take it by 10 minutes, you'll have roughly the full duration to find an excellent high value opportunity. Okay, let's jump back into some low elo games to highlight and solve more super common mistakes that are losing you games. To start, we're joining back with our Olaf from earlier, who ended this game at 9, 4, and 3 in a 21-minute loss. By 5:25, he already had 4 kills and was the highest CS in the game. So what went so wrong that he lost in only 20 minutes? Well, after his double kill that we saw bottom around 5:12, over the course of the next 4 minutes, as the strongest person in the game, Olaf spends a total of 7 seconds, either in combat or in enemy territory. And this is really what we meant earlier when we talked about uninteractive gameplay. It was actually super common that we saw low elo junglers get good starts, a nice looking KDA, then just literally do nothing with it. This is obviously not a reliable way to climb and a waste of a good KDA. In this game, we get another great example from a gold 2 Jax who goes 12-6 in a 31-minute loss and was 3-1 here at 7 minutes. He's up against a Kayn who is behind, so this is a matchup that he can dominate. Instead, we see Jax clearing his jungle top to bottom. He only interacts with the other team because he just runs into them before returning to taking his raptors, standing mid for a bit, then grabbing blue and Gromp before recalling. This was 3 minutes as a fed jungler in a dominant matchup. This game, Jax takes his very first step into the enemy jungle at 11 minutes and 30 seconds. Jumping back, let's talk about what Jax could have done to take over this game with his lead. After taking Gromp and Crab here, Jax hits level 6 and is the strongest champion in the game. Top lane is trading heavily, and the enemy Maokai is low on health. He also knows that Kayn started blue this game, so red will be spawning very soon, along with Herald at 8 minutes. So there are 3 awesome power plays that he can make right here on the red side of the map. He can gank top, invade red, or take Herald, and probably all 3. Instead, as we know, he runs back into his jungle to farm wolves. This was just a massive waste of his great start to the game. And again, this is just such a clear indicator that a good KDA is not a clear indication that you made winning plays for your team. In this next game, we're joining with a gold 4 Warwick who went 9, 4, and 12 in this 27-minute loss. At 12 minutes here, he's 3-1 and finds a successful gank bottom with 2 kills. What does he do? Runs straight back into his jungle to clear out red. A bit later, at 13:30, we see Warwick back in the bottom lane once again picking up 2 kills. What does he do next? You guessed it, straight back into his jungle. Jumping forward a bit, we can see that the enemy bot lane has 5 deaths and their tower is still standing strong. This is a really fantastic way to lose a game with a good KDA and hits on our main point of punishing deaths from earlier. You won't always be able to take more off of a kill, but when you can, getting more than the gold from a kill is a crucial part of truly winning games. So, why do you have a good KDA but feel like you still lose games? Well, obviously there will be times where your team is just hard to carry, but unless you're a challenger player, and even probably then, there will always be more that you could have done to take over a game with your lead. To start winning more games, we recommend that you improve your objective control, especially taking Herald between 8 to 10 minutes and finding a clean gank in the next 4 minutes so you can drop it and get max value. Beyond that, make sure you're being absolutely oppressive with your leads, in the enemy's face, forcing objectives, pushing towers, etc. Even if you make mistakes doing this and throw, that's how you can improve. You'll never get better playing safe, farming your jungle, and slowly losing. By the way, we want to make sure that you know all about Skill Capped. Over on our website, we have over 800 of the absolute best guides for improving in League of Legends and so much more, including direct pro challenger coaching. In fact, if you don't significantly improve while actively using Skill Capped, you can claim a full refund, no questions asked. So there's literally no risk. So be sure to sign up right after this to start climbing today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.